We have Julian, who's calling in from Texas. Julian, you are live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Holy cow! I didn't actually think I'd be picked up. I thought I'd get dropped because I called too late. I'm excited.
You did it. Congratulations. What's going on, Julian?
I wanted to talk about knowledge, science, secularism, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Because I realized that I don't really know as much as I think I know earlier. This all started when I was just completing up a job. I bury cable for a living, and I had accidentally ate a little bit of dirt, unsurprisingly, because I had to crawl on all fours to bury it. And I was like, tapeworms are located in the dirt. How do they get in the dirt? And I used Google, and that got answered. And I was like, man, I don't know if that's correct or not. Where am I supposed to go find out about this? I can't afford college. I don't know any scientists. And I figured this place would be the best channel to call because, I mean, as the show says, it's Truth Wanted.
So wait, Julian, are you calling me to ask me where tapeworms come from? Is that actually where we're going here?
I was just saying that's what brought up my thought. And I was like, oh yeah, Truth Wanted is calling today. And I wanted to know more information just in general. Where's the best sources of information, current scientific information to learn from that isn't just Google or Wikipedia? Because I like to learn and I don't know enough.
Okay. Yeah. So I was going to surprise you because I actually found out my adopted cat. I haven't talked about my new adopted cat very much on this show, you guys. His name is Lord Frieza. And I've had him for a few months now. We just saw a tapeworm out of his booty hole the other day. And we just had him tested. We just had him tested a few weeks ago, and he did not have a tapeworm, according to this test. Turns out there's a lot of false negatives for tapeworms. So we just got him some medication. And I think he's feeling better and stuff. So I learned a lot about tapeworms recently. So I could actually tell you about the tapeworm thing, but that's not what you want to ask about, which is good. Let's take it to JL first. JL, when you go to reference information or when you're looking at sources for stuff, what are you looking at?
So I know it's not probably not what he's expecting because he used like other things other than Google and Wikipedia. So I spend a lot of time on Google Scholar. So because you can get the references. Like if you go to sources like Wikipedia, you can go to the where they're referencing and find those actual scholarly articles that they're referencing in those articles. So I tend to spend a lot of time there, but it's also in books. So if you're addressing a particular topic, for example, just throwing it out there, when addressing, say, presuppositional apologetics, then you find who the people are that were involved in that, like say it was Van Til or Greg Ponson, a number of other names, and then you go and you look for their books, and then you read their books, or you can read some summations of their books and then find their arguments and then work from there. And it's it takes time. I find that going to the source is always the absolute best. So instead of just coming up with an article or come like that, look into the individuals themselves, look into the body of their work, so you can get the best kind of information, so you get a scope on what their ideas are, what their focuses are, and what they're trying to do, and then you can get a better sense of what is the information that's being put out there. So I would say scholarly articles and going to the source, the books themselves written by whoever you're investigating, whether it be a scientist or a philosopher or a theologian or whoever.
Yeah. And it is going to depend on subject matter, but I'll tell you this, Julian, for every deep dive that I've done on this show, the reason why I don't do them all the time is because I actually do a lot of work in doing it. It's not just what does it say on the Wikipedia page? Like for my one that I did about the CIA's involvement with drugging people with LSD and stuff, right? I went to Internet Archive, which is a free website you can go to, and I actually looked at the released documents from the testimonies that were given in Congress and stuff, right? The primary sources, right? What are called primary sources, the original sources for some of this stuff, just so I can get some firsthand knowledge of it. And I can tell you, even after doing all that, there's still a lot I don't know about what exactly happened. The truth is, real knowledge, right, is really hard to do. That's why we trust doctors to go to school for 8 years to get the knowledge that they need to do what they do, and they learn about all kinds of stuff that they don't necessarily use every day, like hard chemistry, right? Stuff that is good to know, but it requires a lot of time to study and figure out and fully understand. So it's I would say if you don't feel like you know stuff, you don't, and that's okay. Like Socrates says, he was wise because he knew that he didn't know the things that other people said that they knew.
Yeah.
That's not how that quote goes. But I don't know the original quote.
No, but
I don't know the original quote, which means I'm wise because I don't know it.
I wanted to see how far you were going to take that. I really did.
So there you go.
But I will say this: I feel validated because I'm not the only one who actually took the time to sift through the MK Ultra reports, like what was actually released. Because I did that too for a video once, and it was just like, but I'm not alone. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate that.
Oh no, I'm brain broken, and will do stupid levels of research for that kind of stuff. Anyway, Julie, you were going to say something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to say I know one of the most important things, like the first step into learning anything, is to admit, hey, I don't know everything. There's potential for me to be wrong. Maybe I am wrong. How do I find that out? Be skeptical of the things that you have already established as like baselines for reality, for lack of better terminology. Sure. And it's just like, is relevant information always not relevant? That's the wrong word. Real information always something that you can find scholarly sources for, or are there times when somebody proposes something that's counter to what somebody else says about reality? Like I'm imagining before hand washing, for example, some people would claim, hey, if you wash your hands before doing surgery, you can potentially save a patient's life, and they didn't know why. And then that led to the study of that led to the study of microbiology. Hey, maybe if we do this, we can keep all the microbes off our hands, that sort of thing. I don't want to just sit here and use my own biases and preconceived ideas on what I think is correct.
Sure.
But
well, I think you're starting from an excellent place.
11-hour shift, hard for me to gather my thoughts.
No, it's okay. I think you're starting from an excellent place, that you're starting from the position that you recognize the things that you don't know, and then you want to find them out. So that's great. Initially your starting point is fantastic. And then it's just about when you start exploring different fields, like if you want to go into one, there's multiple different voices in that field, is that don't go in. And this was a tough thing for me when I kind of started going down this road, was don't go in trying to find the thing that matches what you feel. Like everybody's got their kind of intuitions about
learning.
Everybody's got their intuitions about
like I feel like I can't learn enough.
Right. And just so if you come at it with intellectual honesty, that's the most important thing. Because I find that a lot of people, in their zeal to try and find their best kind of explanation as to like reality or phenomena or whatever, tend to sometimes, and it's no fault of their own, but they tend to kind of slide with what confirms what they already kind of feel is right. And that's an important thing to recognize. So as long as you can keep that in mind, then you can approach it as objectively as possible, and then kind of find, what you feel fits and what has the most evidence going for it, so that you don't wind up going, that particular field of philosophy, that's got to be the right one because that kind of validates what I think. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. But I think you're on the right path, and you've started in the right place, and you're heading in the right direction.
So I'm going to tell you something that's going to sound very disappointing. Go ahead, Julian.
No, it was just like you started talking. There is a delay, and I know there's a delay, and I was like, "Is he done talking?" And it's my turn, or is it the next guy's turn? I interrupted you. You go.
Well, so here's what I was going to say, right? So I'm going to tell you something in my personal opinion that's going to make you probably very disappointed, because you asked a very good question. Okay, well, some study says something about this, and what do I do with that information? How do I evaluate that? The truth is, the honest to God truth is, you can't. And you probably won't be able to. And here's the reason why. Whatever studies you're looking at, if it's in a reputable publication, if it's in a journal, that journal audience is not meant for you. It's meant for people who at least have undergraduate degrees, if not master's degrees, if not PhDs in the topic that journal publishes in, right? And so the methodologies, the terminologies, the histories, the everything that's used in even just comprehending what a good source is going to tell you is not going to be very accessible to you because it's not written for you, right?
So
it's written for experts.
So I have to know about the thing before I can even determine if it's truthful.
Yes.
Otherwise, I'm just having to sit here and just take it on conjecture, maybe.
I have a communication studies degree. I look at communication journals and I see shit I don't understand all the time. Like, I just have an undergrad. You know what I mean? I don't have a PhD or anything, but it's like I am at least familiar with the terminology and some of the background field knowledge, and it's still so specific that it's going to be hard for me to interpret. So you're wondering, okay, well, is the world unnavigable? Does that mean that I can't know things? And in some ways, yeah, you kind of can't. You kind of can't be the one to determine the pH balance of orange juice, right? Unless you know how to do that kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, unless you have the training, you really aren't going to be the arbiter of that kind of knowledge. At some level, as human beings, we have to kind of entrust our knowledge into experts, into that siloing. When I talk about news stories on here, first of all, if you're looking at news, I recommend you pay for your news, whatever you get. That's the one advice I have, because if you're paying for your news, it's likely a higher quality news source. But if you don't have that option as an accessibility, that's fine. If you're just hearing from guys like me about your news, you have to trust that, one, I'm being honest with you, and that I can read the news, and that I'm also quoting directly, because sources like the AP, I'm going to trust because they have legal liability for the stuff that they publish. They can't just post things willy-nilly. They have things called libel suits that can happen, as well as a myriad of other things, stuff that's standard to AP journal practices about how they write and their writing styles. That's going to, make the quality of their writing more consistent. And if they do publish anything wrong, they typically have an obligation to write a retraction based on whatever is written there. So publications that have standards,
that's
like
always
that,
that's always. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
You cut out for a second, and I thought you had finished. I'm sorry.
Just like popular science mags, popular science itself, actually, Nature, right? These other real popular magazines / journals, like, they make themselves much more accessible to the public so that you can understand it. But whether or not you're going to be the arbiter of that, if you're doing original research on a subject that hasn't been done before, chances are you're not going to be able to fully know, because the people who are experts in a lot of these fields, they don't fully know a lot of times. They're trying to figure this stuff out too. It's really hard. Knowing stuff is really hard. Mm-hmm. That's kind of my spiel there.
Ain't that the flipping truth, man?
Yeah. So
no, I find it respectable for somebody to be able to go, you know what, I could possibly be wrong. But follow-up. I have 2 follow-up questions, and then I'll get out of you guys' hair, because I know it's getting close to that time. Number 1, is it wrong for somebody to go, I'm right until proven wrong, especially when it comes to matters like, I'm going to say, evolution? I know it's a very hotly disputed topic by some people that don't know about it, and even some people that know a lot about it. But there's people that say this is objectively true unless you can prove otherwise. I have mountains of evidence supporting me. Since I don't have any evidence suggesting that it's wrong, I'm not going to say that it's wrong. So I'm going to go with the positive. Is it wrong to do that?
I'll answer on this quickly first, and then I'll let JL Warren answer on this. So again, a preface here: I'm not a philosopher. I will read books on philosophy sometimes, and there is this concept called the Null Hypothesis. Okay, and the Null Hypothesis says basically this: is that when you're examining phenomenon, specifically in statistics is when the Null Hypothesis is used. But when you're examining phenomenon sort of in general, right, you want to be more skeptical than you want to be accepting of something to be true. So in other words, you can accept that the Null Hypothesis...
Like the scientific method, right?
Yeah, kind of like the scientific method, but the Null Hypothesis is basically saying, okay, you're going to accept that there actually isn't a relationship here until proven otherwise, right? In other words, you could keep going with your same body of knowledge before you are able to evaluate anything new, because otherwise, how can you evaluate something entirely new, right? If we're considering new forms of thought, how do we get there? What's that process like? We have to be able to use already established knowledge to get there, right? We still have to use the same methods that we've been using yesterday to get to that stuff. Now, we do, obviously different scientists and engineers, people smarter than me, will come up with new stuff, new ways to test things. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is they had to figure out other ways to figure out how those new ways were more reliable. You know what I mean? We have to use our established knowledge before we can get to new knowledge claims. And so The null hypothesis is what you should take with a lot of things. So if somebody says, I believe in Glibberglob, the god of evil and ice cream cones, and he lives on planet Jupiter, but he's also invisible. Could that be true? Yeah, sure. But I'm going to accept the null hypothesis and say, I'm not going to change anything about my beliefs until something is shown to the contrary that I should. And that's my understanding of it. But I'm also not a statistician, so I could get that wrong. And I feel like I have to keep saying that because that's the moral of the story. JL, what do you think?
I completely agree with you. You kind of took the words out of my mouth regarding the null hypothesis. And so I think you nailed it. In keeping things in mind, not to multiply your entities unnecessarily, don't make any more assumptions than you have to, and always recognize that when we are developing the models that explain the phenomena that we see in the world, the purpose of science is to improve those models. So a part of that process is by tearing down the old model so that we can build a better and more accurate model that makes more accurate predictions about reality and explains reality even better. So that's the whole point of the whole process that we go through. So we acknowledge that there could always be more information that's available to us. There could always be something on the horizon. And even if we found out everything that we could possibly know, we'd never say that we found out everything. We're never going to get to 100% because that at least keeps us honest and keeps us, looking for more stuff. So as long as you have that curiosity, as long as you're willing to approach it from that perspective and keep learning and always acknowledge that you could learn more, there could be more evidence on the horizon, and go with the best model. And that's what I do typically is I side with the model that typically makes the best and the most accurate predictions about reality. That's the one we want to work with because that's how we understand things like, evolution to be true, to be representative of reality, that this is it. And this is how we're accurately describing the phenomena. So, keep those things in mind. Plus everything that Dan said regarding the null hypothesis, very, very important. So,
yeah.
Yes, sir. So when you say model, are you meaning, I'm having trouble grasping what you mean. Like, I know the scientific method is a model of discerning truth. It's like you form a hypothesis, gather evidence, see what that evidence suggests. Based off of my evidence that I've seen, my hypothesis is either true or false, and I can make predictive expectation of what I should see in reality based off of this evidence, that evidence. If I was wrong, then it would be this. I'm having difficulty understanding what you mean by the word model. Can you define it for me, please?
When I use the word model, and maybe JL, you're going to say differently, I'm talking about statistical model. Okay. So after this call, I want you to look this up, Julian. I want you to look up Bayesian statistics. That's Bayesan. Okay. There is this guy, last name is Bayes, right? And he came up with this idea. He was like, what if we could assign statistical probabilities to whether things are true or not, whether we think things are true or not, and what if we could update that when we get new information? What if not only that, what if we can take these abstract concepts and actually put them into a number form so that we can actually assign a number value, a probability as to what we think something could be true or not. And this is a really interesting idea. And that's what he did. He came up with Bayesian statistics, and Bayesian statistics is exactly that. It's assigning a probability value to what you believe is something to be true, testing that belief against reality, right? Usually scientific method is one way in which you do that. And then updating your model after you come across it. And you can actually do this in number form. Like you can literally write this in a math equation. I don't have time to explain the entirety of it, and you probably won't get it in one conversation, and that's okay because it's going to take a little bit. But when I'm talking about models, I literally mean models. I mean, you can actually write this out in number form and update your beliefs based on what you see, and assign these kinds of numbers to it. It's a very interesting process. But JL, would you agree with that idea of model, or maybe you have a different understanding?
I would agree with what you presented. And I also would, from where I was speaking, I was talking about the models that we use as representations of reality in and of itself. So like when we use the information that we can gather utilizing things like mathematics in order to derive a better image of something that is difficult to like see in reality. So if, like, for example, when you're looking at a picture of the solar system, obviously you can't look up into the sky with your naked eye and see these things, but we can develop an accurate representation of our solar system and our solar system in in relation to the sun, in relation to other stars and other galaxies. And we can do this because of the information we have. So we take the collective information we have in a particular thing, in a particular field, and we use that to assemble a model that we can then make predictions about. It was the best example I have of this is obviously, and I know a lot of people out there are familiar with it, is how we predicted Neptune. So essentially, we had a model of the solar system leading out to Uranus, and then, but there, because of perturbations in that orbit, we hypothesized that there was another planetary body out there that we didn't know. So we used the model that we had that went up to Uranus, and then we made a prediction about like what would cause this. And then we predicted that, well, if it's true, if the model holds true, then we will expect to see this planetary body of this particular size appear in this window of visibility at this date and time. We look at that time, there's we discovered a planet, and so on and so forth. And that's how we keep improving these models as we get better and better and more accurate information. So that's what essentially what I was kind of referring to was just the things that we create to represent reality that makes it easier to visualize when people are looking at them.
Yeah. That's another alternate and also acceptable version of the word model, depending on how you're using it in that context. Yeah, for sure. Julian, I think we got some heady spaces.
I'm still here.
Yeah. How are you feeling?
No, I'm feeling pretty good. I looked at Bayesian statistics, and I read like the quick first result definition of it, and I was listening to what you guys said, and I was like, So to summarize it, BS is literally I have this amount of pieces of evidence versus this for one argument versus this amount of number of it for another one. So I'm more correctly in this one over here, option A instead of option B. And I had to mute myself because I thought that was funny because I was like BS instead of just, full waste. Statistics.
Yeah, sort of. You're assigning prior probability to things and testing it for later. But again, right. I can't go into it. It's first of all, it's not entertaining and it's boring, and I don't want to bore the audience. But it will take some work. But once you realize it's a really powerful tool. You can figure it out, and it's
I honestly thought he was like he read that first line. He was like I was like I looked it up and I read.
I was like I looked it up and I understood it. No, he's like I totally get it. It's what do you call it? It's like that movie with Leonardo DiCaprio and Robin Williams, where he's like the janitor. He's doing the numbers on the chalkboard. Yeah, Matt Damon. I said Leonardo DiCaprio, didn't I?
You did.
Wow, that's sad. Well, that's on the internet forever.
I have no idea what movie you guys are talking about.
That's fine. I got it wrong.
That wasn't very good.
Here's the difference, Julian. Nobody's going to comment that you don't know the movie. Everybody's going to comment that I got that wrong. So that's the difference in our level of.
So it's your fault that I don't know what you're talking about.
Sure. Yeah, you can blame it on me. That's totally fine. Anyway, we do have to let you go.